Supreme Commander Vax'Thul of the Galactic Hegemony stood at the viewport of his command vessel, the Inevitable, and sighed with such exaggerated weariness that his aide, junior tactician McClure, glanced up in concern. "Something troubles you, Supreme Commander?" McClure asked, his four eyes blinking in sequence, a nervous habit that drove Vax'Thul absolutely mad. "Oh, nothing much," Vax'Thul replied, waving a dismissive tentacle. "Just the complete and utter incompetence of our intelligence division, the baffling decisions of our council, and the fact that we are about to declare war on a species that we know almost nothing about." "You know Tuesday stuff." McClure blinked again. All four eyes at once this time. "But Supreme Commander, today is Zordag, the 5th day of—" "It's an expression, McClure," Vax'Thul interrupted, turning his gaze back to the stars. "One of many things you'd know if you bothered to study our enemy beyond their crude weaponry and planetary defenses." The Supreme Commander's skin rippled with annoyance, changing from its usual majestic purple to an irritated red-orange. 3 solar cycles. That's all the time the Galactic Hegemony Council had given him to prepare for this war. 3 solar cycles. As if conquering a new species was as simple as organizing a dinner party. "The Council awaits your presence, Supreme Commander," McClure reminded him, checking the chronometer embedded in his wrist. "The emergency session begins in 7 minutes. "Emergency," Vax'Thul muttered, stalking toward the door. "Everything's an emergency with these people. Been watching these humans for decades, but suddenly now it's an emergency." As they walked through the gleaming corridors of the Inevitable, crew members saluted and pressed themselves against walls to let them pass. Vax'Thul barely noticed. His mind was racing through every scrap of information he'd absorbed about the humans, a species that had gone from primitive combustion engines to rudimentary space travel in less than a century. A species that, according to some reports, communicated as much through sarcasm and humor as they did through direct speech. A species that, if the Council got its way, they would be bombing into extinction by the end of the month. "You know what the real emergency is, McClure?" Vax'Thul asked, not waiting for an answer. "The emergency is that we are being pushed into this conflict by a council that hasn't seen actual combat since before your great-grandparents' egg was laid." "My species reproduces through binary fission, sir," McClure replied quietly. "Again, not the point," Vax'Thul snapped. They arrived at the council chambers, a vast circular room with a holographic projection of the galaxy rotating slowly in its center. The 27 members of the Galactic Hegemony Council were already seated, their varied physiologies accommodated by specially designed chairs. Some floated in bubbling tanks of nutrient fluid. Others perched on heated rocks. One existed as a sentient gas contained within a specially pressurized suit. And at the head of them all sat High Counselor Zurafex, her 6 arms folded primely in front of her, the jewels embedded in her exoskeleton catching the light with every small movement. Her mandibles clicked together impatiently as Vax'Thul approached. "Supreme Commander," she said, her voice somehow both melodious and grating at the same time. "So good of you to join us. We were beginning to wonder if Earth's gravitational pull had somehow reached across space and time to make you heavy of foot." The council chamber filled with the various sounds that passed for laughter among the different species. Vax'Thul forced his skin to remain a calm purple. "My apologies, High Counselor," he said, bowing slightly. "I was reviewing the latest intelligence on the humans." Yes, the humans," said Counselor Drac Peel, a gelatinous mass whose voice emanated from a translator device floating beside him. "Such a fascinating species. Shame we have to destroy them." "Do we, though?" Vax'Thul couldn't help asking. "Is that truly necessary?" The holographic galaxy zoomed in, focusing on a small spiral arm, then further to a yellow star, and finally to a blue-green planet Earth. "Need I remind you, Supreme Commander," said Zurafex, "that the humans have repeatedly ignored our subspace communications. Perhaps because they don't have subspace communication technology yet," Vax'Thul suggested, trying and failing to keep the sarcasm from his voice. "They have violated our territory," continued Zurafex as if he hadn't spoken. "They sent one probe into the outer reaches of what we decided last century was our territory. A region, I might add, that is 17 light-years from their planet and which we have never actually visited ourselves. And most damning of all," Zurafex raised her voice, "they possess the genetic markers." "Ah, there it was. The real reason. The only reason. The precursor gene," Vax'Thul said flatly. Exactly. Drac Peel wobbled excitedly. Our scientists have confirmed it. These humans carry genetic material from the precursors themselves. They could potentially access precursor technology, and if that happens, they could challenge our dominance of the galaxy, finished Counselor Tazgurun, a reptilian being whose scales scraped against each other with every breath. We have contained or eliminated every other species that carried the markers. Humans will be no different. Vax'Thul took a deep breath. Counselors, I must urge caution. The humans may carry these genetic markers, but they show no signs of being able to access precursor technology. They are still figuring out how to live on their own planet without destroying it. They pose no immediate threat to us. That's exactly what the Vrexians said about the Tuileries, Zurafex retorted. And now the Vrexians exist only in our historical archives, while the Tuileries would have ruled half the galaxy if we hadn't stepped in. The Tuileries were actively experimenting with precursor artifacts, Vax'Thul pointed out. The humans don't even know the precursors existed. Enough. Zurafex's mandibles clacked sharply. The decision has been made, Supreme Commander. The Council has voted. War with Earth begins in 3 cycles. Your objections have been noted and dismissed. Your orders are to prepare the fleet for the initial strike. Vax'Thul's skin darkened to a deep indigo, the color of resignation. As the Council commands, he said, bowing again. Before you go, Supreme Commander, Zurafex added, there is one more matter. The High Advisor position for the Earth campaign. The Council has selected Admiral Nuum for the role. Vax'Thul froze. Admiral Nuum? But she's been stationed at the Outer Rim for the past 7 cycles. She knows nothing about Earth or humans. On the contrary, Zurafex's mandibles formed what passed for a smile among her kind. Admiral Nuum has been conducting her own independent research on humanity. She requested the assignment specifically. That was unexpected. Admiral Nuum was known throughout the hegemony as a brilliant strategist, but also as something of a recluse. For her to request any assignment, let alone one involving a pre-interstellar species, was highly unusual. I look forward to working with the Admiral, Vax'Thul said carefully. When will she arrive? She's already here, came a voice from behind him. Vax'Thul turned to see a tall figure entering the council chamber. Admiral Nuum walked with the fluid grace that her species, the Vexari, were known for. Her iridescent scales shifted colors subtly with each movement, currently displaying a pattern that indicated confidence and authority. The neural interface nodes at her temples pulsed with a soft blue light. Supreme Commander Vax'Thul, she said, inclining her head slightly, your reputation precedes you. As does yours, Admiral, Vax'Thul replied, studying her closely. Something about her seemed off, though he couldn't quite place what it was. Perhaps it was just that he'd never met a Velkari before. They were rare in the military hierarchy, preferring scientific and diplomatic roles. The Admiral will be overseeing all strategic decisions regarding the Earth campaign, Zurafex announced. You will, of course, maintain tactical command of the fleet, Supreme Commander. In other words, Vax'Thul would be taking orders from Nuum, a demotion in all but name. He kept his skin a carefully neutral purple. I look forward to our collaboration, Supreme Commander, Admiral Nuum said, her voice melodious yet authoritative. I have studied your previous campaigns extensively. Your victory at the Taurus Nebula was particularly impressive. Thank you, Admiral, Vax'Thul replied, somewhat surprised by the specific reference. The Taurus campaign had been a minor conflict, notable only for how Vax'Thul had avoided casualties on both sides through an unconventional approach. Not the sort of thing that usually impressed the High Command. If there's nothing else, Counselors, Admiral Nuum asked, turning to face the Council. Just one thing, said Counselor Tazgurun. Will you be implementing the Void Protocol for this campaign, Admiral? The Void Protocol. Vax'Thul felt his heart sink. Total information blackout. No communication with any other civilizations until the target species was completely subjugated or eliminated. No, Admiral Nuum said firmly. The Void Protocol would be counterproductive in this instance. The humans have allies they are not even aware of yet. Cutting ourselves off from all communication would only make our task more difficult. Murmurs rippled through the council. Zurafex's jeweled exoskeleton flashed with patterns indicating surprise and displeasure. That is highly irregular, Admiral, she said. The Void Protocol has been standard procedure for all extinction-level campaigns since the Mandari incident. And the Mandari campaign was a disaster precisely because we isolated ourselves from potentially valuable intelligence. Admiral Nuum countered smoothly. I have prepared a detailed analysis explaining my reasoning, which my aide will distribute to all council members immediately. Vax'Thul watched this exchange with growing curiosity. Admiral Nuum was directly challenging the council's established protocols, something almost unheard of. And they were letting her. Even Zurafex, who tolerated no dissent, seemed hesitant to push back. Very well, Admiral, Zurafex conceded after a moment. We will review your analysis, but the Council reserves the right to implement the Void Protocol at any time if circumstances warrant. Of course, High Counselor, Admiral Nuum bowed slightly. Now, if you will excuse us, the Supreme Commander and I have much to discuss before the fleet departs. Without waiting for a formal dismissal, Admiral Nuum turned and walked toward the exit, clearly expecting Vax'Thul to follow. After a moment's hesitation, he did. Once they were in the corridor outside the council chambers, Admiral Nuum spoke without looking at him. You disagree with this war, don't you, Supreme Commander? Vax'Thul glanced around to ensure they were alone. My personal opinions are relevant. Admiral, I follow the Council's directives. Please, she said, finally turning to face him. We both know that's diplomatic garbage. You have been arguing against this campaign from the beginning. Your reports to the Council practically scream, leave the humans alone. Vax'Thul felt his skin involuntarily flush a defensive orange. I simply advocated for a more measured approach. The humans are primitive, yes, but they are advancing quickly. They could become valuable allies rather than enemies. Interesting, Admiral Nuum murmured. Most of the hegemony's military leaders view any emerging species as either a threat to be eliminated or a resource to be exploited. Yet you see potential allies. Is that so unusual? Vax'Thul asked. In my experience, yes. She studied him for a moment. Walk with me, Supreme Commander. I'd like to show you something. They made their way through the station to a secure area that Vax'Thul had never visited before. Admiral Nuum placed her palm against a scanner, and a door slid open to reveal a small, Spartanly furnished office. My temporary quarters, she explained, gesturing for him to enter. Secure from Council surveillance. That made Vax'Thul hesitate. Admiral, if you are suggesting some sort of— Relax, Supreme Commander, she said with what sounded suspiciously like amusement. I'm not planning a coup, I simply want to speak freely without the Council's ever-present eyes and ears. Once inside, Admiral Nuum activated a device on her desk that emitted a soft hum, a signal jammer. Vax'Thul realized. Whatever she wanted to discuss, she was serious about keeping it private. What do you know about the precursors, Commander? She asked, taking a seat and motioning for him to do the same. Only what everyone knows, he replied cautiously. An ancient species that achieved technological advancement far beyond our current capabilities. They disappeared roughly 2 million years ago, leaving behind artifacts and ruins across the galaxy, and certain species carry genetic markers that allow them to interface with precursor technology. And what do you know about how the hegemony treats those species? Her scales shifted to a pattern Vax'Thul couldn't quite interpret. They are considered threats to galactic stability, he said carefully. The official policy is containment, or, if necessary, elimination. Containment, Admiral Nuum repeated. Such a sterile word for genocide, don't you think? Vax'Thul stiffened. This was dangerous territory. Criticizing the Council's fundamental policies was the fastest way to find oneself reassigned to monitoring gas giant atmospheric patterns for the rest of one's career, if one was lucky. Admiral, with all due respect, why are we having this conversation? The Council has ordered the Earth campaign to proceed. We have our orders. Indeed we do, she agreed, and we will follow them, after a fashion. But first, I want to be certain of where you stand, Commander Vax'Thul. Because what I'm about to tell you will either make you my most valuable ally or my most dangerous enemy. She leaned forward, her scales shifting to a deep, serious blue. The official history of the precursors is a lie. They weren't a single species, but a collaborative civilization of multiple species working together, and they didn't disappear. They were systematically exterminated by the ancestors of what would become the Galactic Hegemony. Vax'Thul felt as if the artificial gravity had suddenly failed. That's not possible. The hegemony itself is only 30,000 years old. The precursors vanished millions of years before that. The political entity known as the Galactic Hegemony is relatively young, yes. Admiral Nuum conceded. But the species that founded it, particularly the Vexari, the Zinthar, and the Quarring, they have been manipulating galactic politics for far longer than the official histories acknowledge. Even if that were true, Vax'Thul said, his mind racing to process these claims, why would they destroy a civilization as advanced as the precursors, and how could they possibly succeed? Admiral Nuum's scales rippled with what looked like grim satisfaction. Excellent questions. The kind of questions that got me sent to the Outer Rim for 7 cycles. The kind of questions that might help us save the humans and possibly reform the hegemony itself. She stood and moved to a wall panel, pressing a sequence that caused a hidden compartment to slide open. From it she withdrew a small, crystalline object that pulsed with its own inner light. This, she said, holding it up, is a genuine precursor data storage device, one of the few that escaped the hegemony's purges. It contains historical records that the Council would kill to suppress and has killed to suppress. Vax'Thul stared at the object, transfixed. If authentic, it was priceless beyond measure. How did you get that? From Earth, believe it or not, Admiral Nuum replied. Or rather, from near Earth. A precursor outpost in what humans would call their Oort cloud. One of many reasons the Council is so eager to eliminate humanity before they venture far enough from their planet to discover it. She placed the crystal on the desk between them. I need to know, Supreme Commander Vax'Thul. Are you willing to hear truths that will change everything you thought you knew about the hegemony? Are you willing to help me prevent another genocide? Vax'Thul looked from the crystal to Admiral Nuum's face. Something still seemed odd about her features, but he couldn't place what it was. Perhaps it was just the gravity of the moment distorting his perception. If what you are saying is true, he said slowly, then the Council has been lying about the most fundamental aspects of our history and our mission. They have been eliminating innocent species out of what? Fear, prejudice, power, Admiral Nuum said simply. The precursor technology would allow these species to challenge the hegemony's dominance. And more importantly, it would reveal the truth about what the founding species did all those millennia ago. Vax'Thul felt his skin darken to the deep blue of moral outrage. Show me, he said. Admiral Nuum nodded and touched the crystal. It responded to her immediately, projecting a holographic display into the air between them. Vax'Thul's eyes widened. But that's impossible, he whispered. The crystal responded to you. That would mean that I carry the precursor gene. Admiral Nuum's scales shifted to a pattern indicating amusement. Yes, I do, as do all Vexari, though my people have gone to extraordinary lengths to hide that fact from the rest of the hegemony. The holographic display showed scenes from an ancient war, massive fleets destroying entire star systems, species being hunted to extinction, a civilization falling. The brutality was beyond anything Vax'Thul had ever witnessed, even in historical accounts of the hegemony's worst conflicts. This can't be real, he said, though in his heart, he feared it was. Oh, it's real, Admiral Nuum assured him, and now you understand why the humans must be protected. They not only carry the precursor gene, but they carry it in a form more pure than any species we have encountered in millennia. If they are allowed to develop naturally, they might rediscover the technology and knowledge that the hegemony has spent thousands of years suppressing. But how can we protect them? Vax'Thul asked. The Council has ordered their subjugation. The fleet will deploy in 3 cycles. Even if we wanted to warn them, they don't have the technology to communicate with us, let alone defend themselves against our weapons. Admiral Nuum's scales shifted to a color pattern. Vax'Thul had never seen before one that seemed almost to mimic the patterns of light and shadow on human skin. That, she said, is where things get interesting. Because you see, Supreme Commander, the humans already know they are in danger. At least, some of them do. That's not possible. Vax'Thul protested. We have maintained strict, non-contact protocols. Their planet is under constant surveillance. Any attempt to communicate with them would have been detected. Unless, Admiral Nuum said, the communication happened in the other direction. What are you saying? Admiral Nuum touched another control, and the holographic display changed to show images of a human, a female with dark hair and features that Vax'Thul recognized as a mix of several Earth ethnicities. This is Dr. Talia Kim, a xenobiologist and linguist from Earth. Admiral Nuum explained. 7 Earth years ago, she detected a faint signal emanating from what her people call the Kuiper Belt, a signal that, it turns out, was coming from the same precursor outpost where I found this crystal. Vax'Thul stared at the image of the human, and she deciphered it. A precursor signal. That's remarkable. More than remarkable. Admiral Nuum agreed. It should have been impossible. Unless, of course, she carries an exceptionally strong expression of the precursor gene, which she does. The hologram shifted again, showing the same human woman in what appeared to be some kind of laboratory, working with equipment that looked primitive by hegemony standards, but impressively advanced for a pre-interstellar species. Dr. Kim not only deciphered the signal, but she also managed to send a response. Admiral Nuum continued, a response that was received by a small group of us who had been studying the outpost. We have been in contact with her ever since, sharing information, preparing for the day when the hegemony would inevitably turn its attention to Earth. Vax'Thul's mind was reeling. So some humans know about us? About the hegemony. A very small group, working in absolute secrecy, Admiral Nuum confirmed. They call themselves the Precursor Initiative, though they don't yet understand the full significance of that name. And what exactly is their plan? Vax'Thul asked. Even with advance warning, they can't possibly defend against our technology. Admiral Nuum's scales shifted again, this time to a pattern indicating what Vax'Thul could only describe as mischievous satisfaction. Their plan, she said, was to place an agent at the highest levels of the hegemony's command structure. Someone who could influence decisions, delay aggressive actions, and if necessary sabotage any attempt to attack Earth. Realization dawned on Vax'Thul like a supernova. You, he breathed. But that's not possible. You are Valkyrie. You have been an admiral in the hegemony fleet for decades. Your service record is impeccable, Admiral Nuum finished for him. Perfect, one might say. Too perfect, perhaps. A distinguished career that somehow never required me to actually implement the Void Protocol or participate directly in the suppression of gene-carrying species. As Vax'Thul stared at her, Admiral Nuum reached up to the neural interface nodes at her temples and pressed them in a specific sequence. There was a soft click, and the nodes detached. Then, to Vax'Thul's utter astonishment, she began to peel away what he now realized was an extraordinarily sophisticated mask. The scales, the Vax'Ari features, all of it came away to reveal human skin beneath. Within moments, Admiral Jax Nuum of the Vax'Ari was gone, and in her place stood the human woman from the hologram, Dr. Talia Kim. Hello, Supreme Commander Vax'Thul, she said in perfect unaccented galactic standard. I think it's time we discussed how we are going to stop this war before it starts, don't you? Vax'Thul's skin cycled rapidly through colors of shock, disbelief, and finally grudging admiration. By all the stars, he whispered, how is this possible? Dr. Kim, or was it still Admiral Nuum? Smiled. That, Commander, is a very long story, and we have just 3 cycles to change the course of history. For exactly 17 seconds, Vax'Thul said nothing. His skin cycled through a kaleidoscope of colors so rapidly that Dr. Kim, formerly Admiral Nuum, worried he might be having some kind of seizure. Are you all right? She asked, reaching out a hand before thinking better of it and pulling back. Am I all right? Vax'Thul finally managed, his voice rising to a pitch that would have shattered crystal on his homeworld. A human has infiltrated the highest echelons of the hegemony military, apparently been operating as an admiral for how long exactly? 5 of your cycles, Dr. Kim answered calmly, about 7 Earth years. 7 years? The Vax'Thul's skin settled on a bright, alarmed yellow. How is that even possible? The biometric scans, the DNA verification, the neural pattern analysis, we're all calibrated to detect species the hegemony knows about, she finished for him. The Valkyrie are notoriously private. They rarely leave their home systems, and when they do, they typically hold diplomatic or scientific positions, not military ones. Your intelligence on their biology is surprisingly limited. But the mask, the void, precursor technology, she said simply, holding up what had appeared to be neural interface nodes. These aren't decorative, they are functional interfaces that project a field around me, altering how others perceive my appearance, voice, even my scent. The actual physical mask is just for redundancy. Vax'Thul sank back into his chair. So the real Admiral Nuum, Never existed, Dr. Kim explained, setting the disguise components carefully on the desk. I created the identity 7 years ago, building a service record through carefully planted data entries and occasional physical appearances at remote outposts. The hegemony bureaucracy did the rest, filling in the gaps with assumptions and routine reports. The Council must have vetted you before assigning you to this campaign, Vax'Thul pointed out. Of course they did, Dr. Kim agreed with a small smile, but they were looking for loyalty to the hegemony, not authenticity of identity. My service record is flawless. My strategic analyses have proven correct in multiple situations, and I have always been careful to support the hegemony's core values, at least officially. Vax'Thul stared at her, his scientist's mind beginning to process the implications. The precursor gene, you have it. That's how you can use their technology. Yes, she nodded, though we call it something else on Earth, less dramatic, haplogroup X7 or the Kim-Nakamura genetic sequence in scientific papers. Only about 1 in 20 million humans carries the full expression of the gene, and those who do tend to be unusually gifted in pattern recognition, language acquisition, and technological intuition, she said. Many of history's greatest scientists and innovators carried at least partial expressions of the gene. We didn't understand its significance until we found the precursor outpost in our Kuiper belt. Vax'Thul's skin had settled into a thoughtful blue-green. You realize what this means, don't you? The Council discovers that a human has infiltrated our command structure, they will launch an immediate attack on Earth. No deliberation, no preparation, just annihilation. I'm well aware of the risk, Dr. Kim said grimly. Why do you think I'm telling you this now, just before the war campaign begins? We are out of time and options. We? Vax'Thul raised what passed for an eyebrow in his species. You and I, she said firmly. Because I have studied your career, Commander Vax'Thul, your unorthodox tactics at the Taurus Nebula, your recommendations for peaceful integration of the Solari, your consistent advocacy for diplomacy over force. You are not like the others, you actually care about avoiding unnecessary bloodshed. Vax'Thul felt his skin involuntarily warm to a pleased orange before he forced it back to a neutral purple. You have taken an enormous risk revealing yourself to me. Calculated risk, she corrected, based on thorough analysis of your psychological profile and decision-making patterns. So I'm predictable? He asked, feeling oddly offended. Consistent, she replied diplomatically, and principled. 2 qualities in short supply in the hegemony hierarchy. Vax'Thul couldn't argue with that assessment. He looked again at the precursor crystal, still projecting its damning historical evidence. What exactly is your plan? He asked. You can't maintain this disguise forever, especially now that you are at the center of a major military campaign. I don't need forever, Dr. Kim said, leaning forward. I just need enough time to implement the Janari Protocol. Vax'Thul blinked all 3 of his eyes simultaneously. The what? The Janari Protocol, she repeated, named after Dr. Marcus Janari, one of our team members on Earth. It's a way to leverage precursor technology to essentially make Earth disappear from the hegemony's detection systems. That's impossible, Vax'Thul said automatically. Our sensor networks cover the entire sector. You can't just make a planet disappear. Not physically, no, Dr. Kim agreed. But we can make it appear uninhabitable, hostile to life, not worth the hegemony's attention. She touched the crystal again, and the holographic display changed to show technical schematics that Vax'Thul could barely comprehend. The precursors developed this technology as a protective measure during their war with your ancestors, she explained. It creates a field around a planet that alters how it appears to long-range sensors. We have spent years placing the necessary devices in Earth's orbit, disguised as satellites or space debris. And these devices are functional? Vax'Thul asked, his scientific curiosity overcoming his shock. Partially, Dr. Kim admitted. We have activated small-scale tests, which is why your scouts occasionally report atmospheric anomalies on Earth. But for full deployment, we need to input the exact frequencies of the hegemony's current sensor technologies, which you couldn't access from Earth, Vax'Thul realized, but which an admiral in charge of a war campaign would have complete access to. Exactly, she nodded. I need to transmit that data back to my team on Earth. Once I do, they can fully activate the Janari Protocol. Earth will appear to be experiencing a catastrophic ecological collapse. Radiation levels will seem to skyrocket. The atmosphere will register as rapidly degrading, and all signs of technological civilization will vanish from your scans, and the Council will assume that humans have somehow destroyed themselves. Vax'Thul sounded skeptical. That's quite a coincidence. Just as we are preparing to attack— Not destroyed, Dr. Kim corrected, facing extinction due to natural disaster. We will make it look like a massive solar flare event has devastated the planet. The Council won't waste resources attacking a world that's already dying. They will simply mark it for periodic monitoring and move on. It was audacious. Insane, really. But Vax'Thul had to admit it might just work. The hegemony, for all its talk of galactic dominance, was fundamentally pragmatic. Why waste resources subjugating a planet that no longer offered any strategic value? So you need me to— What? Exactly, he asked. First, help me maintain my cover for just a bit longer, Dr. Kim said. Second, give me access to the sensor calibration protocols for the fleet. And third, when the Council inevitably decides to send a verification team to check on Earth's condition after the disaster, ensure that you are in command of that mission. And then, Dr. Kim smiled, you will become the first official hegemony representative to make peaceful contact with humanity. Vax'Thul's skin rippled with uncertainty. You are asking me to commit treason against the hegemony. I'm asking you to prevent a genocide, she countered, to be on the right side of history, to help forge a new relationship between our species based on cooperation rather than conquest. Before Vax'Thul could respond, a sharp alert sounded from the desk. Dr. Kim quickly checked a display. Council security, she said tensely. They are coming this way, probably just a routine check, but we can't risk them finding you like this, Vax'Thul finished, standing quickly. What do we do? Dr. Kim was already reattaching her disguise, the Velsari features sliding back into place with unsettling ease. Act natural. I'm Admiral Nuum again. We are discussing battle plans, nothing suspicious. And the crystal. Vax'Thul gestured to the still-active precursor artifact. Dr. Kim, now Admiral Nuum, again touched it once more, and the holographic display vanished. She quickly returned it to its hidden compartment just as a chime announced someone at the door. Enter, she called, her voice once again taking on the melodious qualities of a Vax'Ari. The door slid open to reveal Meklor, Vax'Thul's aide, looking even more nervous than usual. Supreme Commander, Admiral, he said, his four eyes blinking rapidly. Forgive the interruption, but the Council has called an emergency session. High Counselor Zura Fex requests your immediate presence. Vax'Thul exchanged a quick glance with Admiral Nuum. Did the Counselor mention the purpose of this session? New intelligence regarding Earth, sir. Meklor replied. Apparently our long-range sensors have detected unusual energy signatures emanating from the planet. The Council is concerned. Vax'Thul felt his heart sink. Had they been discovered already? Had the Council somehow detected the precursor technology that Dr. Kim's team had deployed? We will be right there, Admiral Nuum said smoothly. Thank you, Junior Tactician. After Meklor left, she turned to Vax'Thul. This could be problematic. Understatement of the cycle, Vax'Thul muttered. If they have detected your precursor devices. They haven't, she assured him. The technology is specifically designed to be undetectable by hegemony sensors. This must be something else. Either way, we need to get to that Council session. Vax'Thul said, if they are moving up the timetable for the attack, then we need to accelerate our plan. Admiral Nuum finished. I need your answer, Commander. Are you with me? Vax'Thul looked at the disguised human for a long moment. Everything he'd been taught about the hegemony's role in the galaxy, everything he'd believed about his own species' history, had been called into question, and yet, I have always sought to minimize casualties in my campaigns, he said slowly, to find solutions that didn't involve wholesale destruction. If what you have shown me is true, if the Council has been systematically eliminating species based on their genetic potential rather than any actual threat, his skin settled into a determined deep blue. Yes. Admiral, I'm with you. Admiral Nuum, Dr. Kim smiled. Then let's go face the Council. The Council chambers were in chaos when they arrived. Councilors were talking over each other, gesturing at the holographic display of Earth that dominated the center of the room. High Counselor Zora Fex was trying to maintain order, her mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. Ah, Supreme Commander, Admiral, she said as they entered. Perhaps you can make sense of this. The hologram zoomed in to show the northern hemisphere of Earth, where a massive aurora was visible, much larger and more intense than any natural phenomenon should be. Our sensors detected this energy surge approximately 1 hour ago, Counselor Drock Peel explained, his gelatinous form quivering with excitement or fear. It was hard to tell with his species. It appears to be some sort of planetary-scale energy field being generated from multiple points around the planet. Vax'Thul carefully kept his expression neutral, but he could feel Admiral Nuum tense slightly beside him. "And what exactly does this mean?" Vax'Thul asked. "It means," Zura-Fex said grimly, "that the humans may have discovered precursor technology far earlier than our models predicted. This energy signature is consistent with precursor defensive systems." Admiral Nuum stepped forward. "If I may, High Counselor, I have studied similar phenomena in other systems. This appears to be the result of a massive solar flare interacting with the planet's magnetosphere, not artificial technology." "A solar flare?" Counselor Taz-Goron's scales rasped as he leaned forward. "Their star shows no signs of such activity. Our sensors wouldn't detect the precursor event," Admiral Nuum explained smoothly. "Only its effects on the planet. I suggest we monitor the situation before jumping to conclusions. If this is indeed natural, it could actually work in our favor." "How so?" asked Zura-Fex. "Solar flares of this magnitude can devastate primitive communications and power systems," Admiral Nuum pointed out. "If the humans are currently dealing with a planetary emergency, their defenses will be compromised. It could make our operations significantly easier." The Council murmured among themselves, considering this perspective. Vax'Thul marveled at Dr. Kim's quick thinking. She was using the Council's own detection of her team's activities to further her deception. "A valid point, Admiral," Zura-Fex conceded. "What do you recommend?" "A short delay," Admiral Nuum suggested. 24 hours to monitor the situation. If this is indeed a natural disaster affecting the humans, we can adjust our strategy accordingly. Perhaps even reduce our force deployment, saving valuable resources for other campaigns. Vax'Thul nodded in agreement. "The Admiral's assessment is sound, High Counselor. A brief delay poses minimal risk and could yield strategic advantages." Zura-Fex's jeweled exoskeleton flashed with patterns indicating calculation and assessment. "Very well, 24 hours. But I want continuous monitoring of the situation. If there's any indication that this is precursor technology rather than a natural phenomenon, we launch immediately. Is that clear?" "Perfectly, High Counselor," Admiral Nuum bowed slightly. As the Council session adjourned, Vax'Thul and Admiral Nuum exited together, maintaining a professional demeanor until they were well away from the chambers. "That was quick thinking," Vax'Thul said quietly. "Necessary improvisation," she replied. "My team must have begun partial implementation of the Janari Protocol when they detected unusual activity from the Hegemony fleet. But without the complete sensor specifications, the effect is imperfect. We need to act quickly. The sensor control center is on level 7. Vax'Thul told her. "I can get you access, but security will be tight, especially now." "Leave that to me," Admiral Nuum said. "Meet me in Docking Bay 3 in 1 hour. Bring any personal items you value. Once we implement the protocol, there's no turning back." Vax'Thul felt his skin ripple with nervous anticipation. "You are suggesting we flee the hegemony?" "I'm suggesting we be prepared for all contingencies," she corrected. 1 hour, Commander." As Admiral Nuum strode away, Vax'Thul wondered if he had just made the biggest mistake of his long career, or perhaps the most important decision of his life. 1 hour later, Vax'Thul arrived at Docking Bay 3 with a small case containing his few personal possessions, mostly scientific instruments and data crystals containing his research. The bay was normally used for diplomatic shuttles, and was currently empty except for a sleek vessel that Vax'Thul recognized as Admiral Nuum's personal transport. The Admiral herself was nowhere to be seen. Vax'Thul checked the chronometer. She was late, which seemed uncharacteristic based on their limited interactions. Just as he was beginning to worry, his communication device chimed. "Commander," came Admiral Nuum's voice, sounding tense. "Proceed to the shuttle and prepare for immediate departure. We have been compromised." Vax'Thul's skin paled to a worried gray. "What happened?" "No time to explain. The shuttle's automated systems will accept your biometric signature. Get on board now." The communication cut off. Vax'Thul hesitated only briefly before hurrying to the shuttle. As Admiral Nuum had promised, the door slid open at his approach, recognizing him despite his lack of authorization for the vessel. Once inside, the shuttle's systems activated automatically, displays lighting up to show the docking bay exterior. Vax'Thul set down his case and moved to the pilot's station, trying to determine if he could operate the unfamiliar controls if necessary. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the station. A security alert. Vax'Thul felt his heart racing. Where was the Admiral? Should he wait or depart as instructed? The decision was made for him as the shuttle's external camera showed a squad of security officers rushing into the docking bay. Weapons drawn. Behind them came High Counselor Zora Fex herself, her exoskeleton flashing with patterns of rage. The shuttle's communication system activated. "Attention, occupant of diplomatic vessel," came an authoritative voice. "You are ordered to exit the shuttle immediately. Failure to comply will result in forcible extraction." Vax'Thul froze. Uncertain. Had Admiral Nuum been captured? Had their plan been discovered? If he surrendered now, he might be able to claim ignorance, to say he was simply following the Admiral's orders without knowing her true identity or intentions. But if Dr. Kim had been captured, if the Council learned that a human had infiltrated their highest ranks, Earth would have no chance. Just as Vax'Thul was considering his limited options, the shuttle's rear door opened. He spun around expecting to face security officers, but instead saw Admiral Nuum rushing inside, carrying a large case. "Seal the door," she commanded, and the shuttle's systems complied instantly. "What happened?" Vax'Thul demanded. "Counselor Taz Gorun happened," she replied grimly, moving quickly to the pilot's station. "He became suspicious when I accessed the sensor control center. Ordered a full security sweep of my quarters while I was working. They found traces of human DNA. Outside, the security officers were taking positions around the shuttle, while technicians rushed to the bay controls presumably to override the door mechanisms. "We need to leave now," Vax'Thul urged. "Not yet," Admiral Nuum replied, opening the case she'd brought. Inside was the precursor crystal and what looked like a transmitter of some kind. "I still need to send the data to Earth." She quickly connected the crystal to the transmitter and began inputting commands. The device hummed to life, glowing with the same inner light as the crystal. "How long will the transmission take?" the Vax'Thul asked anxiously, watching as the security team outside brought up what appeared to be a door-breaching device. 3 minutes, she replied, not looking up from her work. "We just need to hold them off that long." "And then what? Even if we escape this station, the entire Hegemony fleet will be after us." Admiral Nuum finally looked up, and to Vax'Thul's surprise she was smiling. "Trust me, Commander, I didn't infiltrate the Hegemony for 7 years without planning an exit strategy." The transmitter's lights began pulsing in a rhythmic pattern. Outside, the security team had positioned their breaching device against the shuttle's door. 60 seconds, Admiral Nuum announced, monitoring the transmission. The breach alarm sounded. They were cutting through the door. 40 seconds. Security officers positioned themselves for entry, weapons ready. 20 seconds. The door integrity warning flashed on the shuttle's display. 10 seconds. The breach was almost complete. Transmission complete. Admiral Nuum announced, disconnecting the crystal from the transmitter and securing both in the case. "Now we can leave." She took the pilot's controls and activated the shuttle's engines. The security officers outside scattered as the engines roared to life. "They have locked down the bay doors," Vax'Thul pointed out, gesturing to the massive metal barriers that remained firmly closed. "Yes, they have," Admiral Nuum agreed, seemingly unconcerned. "Which is why we are not going out that way." She adjusted the controls, and to Vax'Thul's horror, the shuttle turned to face the interior wall of the docking bay. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "We will crash." "No, we won't," she said confidently, activating what Vax'Thul recognized as weapons systems which diplomatic shuttles definitely should not have. "Because that wall isn't actually there." Before Vax'Thul could question this baffling statement, Admiral Nuum fired the shuttle's weapons. The energy beam struck the wall and passed right through it, revealing a swirling field of energy beyond. "A dimensional portal," Vax'Thul gasped, his scientific mind struggling to comprehend what he was seeing. "Precursor technology," Admiral Nuum confirmed, guiding the shuttle toward the opening. "Installed 5 years ago during a routine station upgrade." The hegemony has been using precursor tech all along, they just don't recognize it as such because the founding species have disguised it as their own innovations. The shuttle entered the portal, and Vax'Thul's vision swam as reality seemed to bend around them. For a moment he felt as if he were everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Then abruptly they emerged into normal space, but not anywhere Vax'Thul recognized. Before them hung a blue-green planet, clouds swirling across its surface, oceans glittering in the light of a yellow star. Earth, Vax'Thul breathed. Home, Dr. Kim agreed, removing her Vax'Thul disguise for what he suspected would be the final time. And thanks to the data we just transmitted, now protected by the most advanced cloaking technology in the galaxy, to the hegemony it will appear as a radiation-soaked wasteland for the next century at least. Vax'Thul stared at the planet with wonder. It's beautiful! It is, Dr. Kim agreed. And now, Supreme Commander Vax'Thul, I'd like to officially welcome you as the first diplomatic envoy from the Galactic Hegemony to Earth. I think you will find my people most eager to learn from you and perhaps teach you a few things in return. As the shuttle descended toward the planet, Vax'Thul felt his skin shift to a color he rarely experienced, the bright, joyful yellow of pure hope. You know, he said, looking at the approaching planet, for a species that supposedly solved problems through aggressive expansion and military might, we have been remarkably easy to manipulate. Dr. Kim laughed. Well, in our defense we had some advantages. Precursor technology, the element of surprise, and most importantly, the fact that you were looking for reasons to destroy us, not reasons to suspect that one of us had already infiltrated your highest ranks. The hegemony will never stop looking for you, Vax'Thul pointed out. For us now, I suppose. Let them look, Dr. Kim said confidently. By the time they figure out what really happened, Earth won't be a pre-interstellar civilization anymore. We will be ready for them. And perhaps with allies like you, we might even be able to reform the hegemony from within. Vax'Thul considered this as they entered Earth's atmosphere, clouds parting to reveal continents and oceans below. You know, Dr. Kim, I'm beginning to understand why the Council was so afraid of humans. You are terrifyingly competent. We have our moments, she agreed with a smile, but mostly, we are just trying to survive and understand our place in the universe like everyone else. A place that now includes harboring a fugitive alien. Vax'Thul noted, consider it the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Dr. Kim replied, after all, they declared war on Earth, but our Peacekeeper was already on their throne, and now Earth has its first alien ambassador. I'd call that a diplomatic victory, wouldn't you? Vax'Thul's skin rippled with amusement as the shuttle descended toward a hidden facility nestled among mountains. I suppose I would, though I suspect this is just the beginning of a much longer story. It always is, Dr. Kim agreed as they touched down on Earth's soil. It always is.